Yes, there you go. Okay, now we're recording with audio.
Now we're recording with audio, and this will be on the borough website in short order. Are there any public comments this morning? Anybody? No? We're very pleased today to have representatives from Econ Partners and Saxon and Stump. They're our lobbyists, et cetera, up in Harrisburg. And they're here to announce all kinds of money they're getting us for various things, I assume.
The band will be in 10 minutes.
Good, good. So Michelle, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. Just a little backstory, which not to steal the thunder of the ladies at the end of the table who created a great PowerPoint presentation for us. The borough decided to engage with, at the time, Kathy and Mandy were with McNeese and have since moved to Saxon and Stump as the borough's lobbyist and Econ Partners for grant writing needs. So outside of, I'm sure you're going to introduce yourselves, I'll turn it over to them.
All right, it's all yours.
Thank you. I'm Kathy Bruder. I am with Saxon and Stump. I am an attorney by background, but I do primarily lobbying because I had the opportunity to work for Governor Corbett for 4 years. And in that role, I was assigned a whole new world I didn't know existed. So when I left, because I did funding at the governor's office, I started doing lobbying. Mandy and I worked at McNeese Wallace together and then went over to Saxon and Stump, where we've been since May of 2020 doing funding. We are part of a group of 10. I chair the group at Saxon and Stump. We do the lobbying piece, and then we work very closely with Colleen and Corey and her team. They do the grant writing. I'll let her talk about that. But our job is to navigate state government, work with your elected officials, tell them why your projects are better and more important and the ones that should be funded. I'll let Mandy give a little background and then we'll, of course.
Sure. Hi, I'm Mandy McClellan. Prior to joining Kathy at McNeese, I worked at PIBC, which is Philadelphia's Economic Development Agency, for 10 years. My background's in historic preservation. So I worked with the city to help them reposition their distressed commercial assets. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it had a residency requirement. So when we left the city, my old boss was friends with Kathy and connected us, and moved over to help work with her and our real estate and municipal clients on funding strategies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we work with Colleen and, one, I should have started out, thank you for the opportunity to work with the borough. We love working with the borough, working with Michelle, and we'll go through. Colleen will talk too. We brought a lot of success here, and our goal and plan is to continue to do so. So, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. Good morning. Colleen Terry with Econ Partners. The company founded in 2012. So this is, I have to always do the math in my head, 14th year. We're women-owned, women-staffed, which I'm very proud of. It's not necessarily deliberately, but it's worked out, I think, serendipitously that way, and it continues to work that way. I love our team. Corey Broad is certainly one of our valued team members. She supports a lot of your projects and your priorities. Spends a lot of time on the phone with Michelle and Nick at McCarthy and lots of other folks within the borough, Jim Babb for sure. But what we do is all public funding. So our firm is completely focused on, we're not lobbyists, but we turn to the expert team to my left for that. But we do work hand in glove. So we work with your team, with the council, with the staff and administration to identify priorities. We keep in touch with various agencies at all levels, so local, state, federal, about funding opportunities, how they change, which is important. They change with administrations, they change with elected officials, priorities change year to year with certain agencies. We stay in touch with the folks, the analysts, from the folks that get the application from the time we submit them, to the folks who are directors of programs, to their analysts, their teams, and certainly the leadership, again, in partnership with Saxon and Stump if we need to advance something beyond the staff level. But we're delighted to work with the borough. Your team is fantastic. I want to say that. You'll hear that several times today from us. We work with a number of municipalities, and not all are as forward-thinking, proactive, communicative, and I think just enthusiastic about making sure they deliver value to the taxpayers and the folks who live here in the borough and visit. So we're just, again, delighted, and I'll let Corey just give a little bit about her program.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Corey Brott, proud Berks County native. I'm a graduate of Governor Mifflin. So when I came on board with Econ Partners in 2023, and I had the opportunity to kind of find my niche in the organization, I kind of knew of Michelle a little bit from mutual contacts, and I was like, well, that's my hometown area. I definitely want to work with that municipality. So kind of just inserted myself there, but I've been loving it. I've been with Econ Partners, like I said, for about 3 years now, and my focus is pretty much municipalities, boroughs, conservation, and yeah, just enjoy working with you and looking forward to progressing that relationship.
Yeah, and if I can, maybe before we start going through the slide, and we'll touch on it throughout, our work with the borough, I'd say is a role model for how we like to work with our other clients, specifically municipalities. Michelle, and this is not just because, you're sitting here, but this client is very organized, and we have, we talk often without Michelle and the borough on, but then, and it's more Mandy leading those conversations with Corey and Colleen. But then we have regular calls, and there's a strategy that council will approve and puts in place. And, we're always talking in between our calls with not just your respective legislators, but also, we'll go into that a little bit more detail, but the funding decision makers. Colleen and Corey have relationships with Office of the Budget and staff, and we all do with DCED and PennDOT. And that's where, it's kind of like how the clock operates from the inside. We know who's doing what. We are getting that intel ahead of time. So our goal today is to make this look easy and seamless. But I do want to share that we are having ongoing effort and communications behind the scenes on your behalf to help you succeed and win. So
That's great. Thanks. So in terms of, just so you have an idea of the breadth of what we do as a firm, and not all of this is applicable to the borough, but certainly just in terms of our reach, our knowledge, our background, and the types of projects and clients we support, not just municipalities, certainly municipalities are a core of our practice area. I would say probably 35 to 40% are public, so either county or municipal based across the Commonwealth. Authorities, so we actually represent a county-based economic development entity in central Pennsylvania. Counties, as I said, economic development agencies, either direct consulting or we partner with them to facilitate grant review, compliance. We do a lot of compliance. So different levels we engage there. But also on the other side, we have a fairly large nonprofit client base, so museums, entities. We do a lot in the children's and sort of disadvantaged space in terms of folks with either brain injury or developmental delay. A lot of agencies that do regional or statewide support for that group of individuals. We do quite a bit there. And just sort of public service agencies, and then educational institutions, higher ed. We have a number of school districts as well that we support. Healthcare systems, Mainline Health is a client, for example. And then we have a whole other side of our practice, heavy industrial. We have an oil refinery that's a client. So it's sort of the breadth of municipal, nonprofit, private developers doing redevelopment, and then, manufacturing. We support equipment and manufacturing growth as well. So I think we're all, hand in glove, and we share that client base sort of mix with Saxon and Stump. So it's a really nice, I think, partnership that we've had for a long time on behalf of the borough and other clients.
And all those groups, as a public sector, you can go after certain monies that a private sector client cannot. So that's significant too. It's better for you.
It is. So in terms of the projects that we support, and again, many of these we've pursued on behalf of the borough, and what I find interesting and professionally engaging, and sort of what we're passionate about is, we're cognizant of the fact that you spend the taxpayer dollar, right? Unlike a private developer maybe has equity, healthcare system has equity, nonprofits have investors or they have donors, so it's sort of a very similar thing. But we are very cognizant of the fact that you have to budget every year. Everything you put forth as a priority is something that is either we're going to displace it from the budget and help you, deliver better return to your taxpayers, your tax base. But we're looking across the breadth of everything you do. So public works, parks and rec, borough administration. You might need equipment. There might be a construction project like the police and municipal buildings. So you have a number of needs that. Private developer, they're just going to build something, or a manufacturing company just wants equipment. But in the borough's case, we're really looking at many different pots for many different types of projects, including planning. So you can look, I'm not going to read them all to you, but we've done funding. If you think of us as sort of we don't do funding for sort of healthcare research or that space, or we're not doing necessarily funding for programmatic needs. It's hard costs. It's capital projects for the most part, or planning to get to the capital project. So everything from the site, so site preparation, environmental remediation, demolition. You've got the Berkshire Mall, for example. That's a great project if it's on the horizon at some point in time, and it's something you're interested in. We can flip a switch, and while it might not be the borough's responsibility, we can support something where maybe the borough can step in and be, an advocate for something that needs to happen to the mall that's important to you. Is it the Crown Plaza? The Crown Plaza is a similar project where it might not be your responsibility, but you certainly probably answer to folks in public meetings and what's going on with that, and they want to know. So we can help be a conduit for, hey, maybe the borough isn't responsible for it, but we can suggest or, be a connection to the individuals that are going to undertake those projects to say there are things that you can do to underwrite some of those development costs. So we can be an asset, I believe, to the borough in that manner as well. And then, all the different types of agencies that we navigate with to advance the funding, or at least even access the funding for you. Again, definitely not going to read all of these, but in terms of the borough, again, as a municipality, you have access to a number of programs that a private company or even a nonprofit might not necessarily. So all of these programs are programs our firm has worked with and Saxon and Stump has worked with, many of them on behalf of the borough. PA Small Water and Sewer, H2O PA, those are all water, wastewater, stormwater. So you can kind of see the breadth there. All of these things, what they have in common is that there's a capital asset somewhere that needs to be improved, replaced, or installed, to benefit sort of the end user, which in many cases are, the taxpayers, the homeowners. Federal as well. Let me carry. Sure. So just in terms of, right, so I want to be careful because Saxon and Stump aren't engaged in federal lobbying on behalf of the borough, but they can help open doors and set up relationships. But a lot of the federal funding that we've looked at on behalf of the borough is public safety related, as you can see. So we've done AFG and SAFER. We've collaborated with either, at the time, your fire chief or your police chief and their team to develop these applications. We've worked with the folks that have done them in the past for the borough to collaborate. We don't ever have to be the lead if it makes sense that someone else is going to do the actual application. We are happy to take a step back and provide support, data, QA, QC review of applications. Community project funding hopefully is back this year. Certainly they're making noise that it will be. So that is your federal elected officials, Chrissy Houlihan, 2 senators, will then put project solicitations out. She's able, each member is able to advance 10 to 15 projects within their district, which are larger than, say Senator Schwank's or Representative Cepeda Freytes district is, but advancing projects that are in the public interest. Boroughs and municipalities tend to get a lot of support from these members. So we haven't talked about it in depth yet, but I'm assuming we're going to put forth a community project funding application on behalf of the borough again this year. And that is happening now. Actually, the forms haven't come out yet, but they will very soon. And usually they have to go to committee at the federal level in April. So this is something we'll be actively engaged in the next couple of weeks.
And this is an area I think we kind of, in working with you, Michelle, and you, Mayor, we kind of tripped into it. Like, I don't think this was part of the initial plan and engagement when we started working with the borough. But then as these opportunities arose, we'll give credit more to Colleen and Corey's group. They started doing the applications and working with your team, going after those monies. We are registered federal lobbyists. We were not at the beginning of our engagement, but we have to be careful because of all the regulation and oversight. So we're not doing federal lobbying, as Colleen said, but we have great relationships with the US Senators' offices and the Congresswoman, but we will just kind of mention that's not lobbying. We're just careful not to cross the line of lobbying that there's an application in, so.
And then locally, yep, absolutely. And Corey works more closely with these than I have, and Holly in our team, who you've not met, but she's back at the office holding down the fort. But a lot of the local funding, not as large of a pot, in most cases, but very important for things that the borough, and a lot of these things are related to environmental resources, parks and rec, things that are very visible to the public and important to things like, tree planting and landscaping and beautification and park cleanup and stream buffering, riparian buffering, those types of things. So all of those things, and Corey keeps a close eye on these for the main part. And I think we've applied for all of these. Firehouse subs is pending now, but they're very important. And something that we do that I think the next slide is going to hit that we're very careful about is matching funds. So anytime we can pursue a grant where we can alleviate the borough's need or our client's need to provide the matching funds directly, we seek to do that. So in most cases, if not all, federal funds can match state and local funds can match state and federal. So it's oftentimes we can put a nice little layer cake together of funding where it's going to minimize, again, the impact to the borough to have to put matching funds towards a project. We're very, very cognizant of that. And then, as I said, all we do is public funding. So this is our niche, and we stay with a project from the beginning to the end. And I like to tell the story, and it's true. Our first client is, our oldest client is still a client today. He was a client when I worked for my prior firm for 10 years. And, you know, while I didn't take him with me, he said, you're starting a firm. I want to help you. I want you to be successful. I'm going to be your first client. I'm going to stay with you. And he, over the years, you know, brought other folks to us. And he's still a client today with an active project. So we stay. And one of the reasons I think that's the case is because, you know, we're a smaller firm. So we, in some cases, get to elect who we work with and who's a good fit for us. Someone that likes a lot of attention, a lot of support, where we can be engaged on a regular basis. As I said, you're not going to go a month where we're not talking to you. Someone from the borough probably won't go a day or two without speaking to someone related to the borough, either via email, on a meeting, or by phone. So we stay with a project. Once we identify the opportunity, we're doing the application, we're submitting the application. Once the application is submitted, we're calling the agency to say which analyst was assigned. We're reaching back out to the analyst to say, hey, this is an econ project. If you have any questions, if you see you're missing anything administratively, what can we get to you? You know, if there's an issue along the way, we help resolve it. Many times we have to go back to the borough, to the engineer to say, hey, what is this FF&E in the estimate? Can you break it out to see if it's eligible? We'll work all those things out behind the scenes so that when that application gets through review and it's scored, you're getting the highest score absolutely possible that we can work to get you. So we stay with that through submission. Then, you know, we coordinate, and we coordinate ahead of time with Saxon and Stump to say, hey, is this even something the legislators would support?
Yeah. And when we, you know, there's a difference in the communications and relationship with the electeds at the beginning of representing a client versus with the borough. We have those years of communications and relationship between the senator, the representative, Colleen's firm, and ours. So in the beginning of, you know, representation, we will introduce the client, their projects, their plan, their strategy. And we'll do like an initial check with the senator and the representative just to make sure there's nothing out there we're not aware of that would be an obstacle. You know, sometimes we had a client we had to walk away from early on. It was in different county, it was swim related, and the representative made it very clear, I have other projects before you. This is not really a priority. So at that point in that relationship, we knew we were not going to be able to be successful for them, so we walked away. With the borough, Senator Schwank is amazing and so supportive of the borough, as is Representative Cepeda Freitas. They have both been really great partners and supportive and I'd say almost passionate for what you're doing here. So in the beginning, we had Mandy usually would do the initial outreach with staff, whether it's in the district, and I think we've been through 2 or 3 staff people. There's been retirements.
Yeah.
And we'll have those conversations. And the way we like to describe it is what we explain to the representatives and to the staff at PennDOT and DCD, and Colleen and them do with those offices and others, is there's a puzzle, and we're helping you put the pieces to the puzzle together using all these different funding sources. And we get a check-in with the representative. You've probably heard of RACP dollars, right? Like everybody goes after RACP dollars. So we will have that conversation with, okay, can we be a priority in this coming round? And often they're like, we don't even know how many rounds there are. That's up to the governor. And we will go down a hypothetical, assuming there's 2 rounds in this coming year, can we be a priority for you in one of the rounds? Or can we be in your top 3 of 2 of the rounds? Because we know with that specific project timeline, we have time to piece the money together over time. So those are our conversations with the legislators who represent you. Then we, at a certain point, Mandy will talk with staff and leadership. Each caucus has their own leadership. At the end of the day, all of these funding decisions that touch with legislator input, the leaders, the bosses of the caucus, the House and Senate Ds and Rs, are deciding who is on that list. And then if it's going to the governor's office, that was the job I had for Governor Corbett, they're deciding if those lists are staying together or if they're being changed. So we also have conversations with the staff, with the leaders, the elected leaders, ad nauseum. Like, we talk to them, we go back a few months later, especially on RACP, because you never know when it's coming out. And then it's like a 911 fire drill, because we know sometimes like somebody might have gone in and brought in a nice project as a recent newbie, but we want to make sure, Schwank is great and her staff is great, as is Sapita, but we just want to make sure their projects didn't get bumped for another one. So then we're going into leadership, gently, politely harassing them, right? We don't want to, we don't want to be too annoying. And we're texting them and talking to them as we are with the governor's office on a number of these projects. So as we're going through that 1 through 6, and before the award announcements, really going in and politely pushing them. So.
And then once the decisions are made, hopefully in the borough's favor, I think a core competency of what we do, econ, not every funding grant administration, grant funding client or firm does this, but I think the backbone of what we do is compliance. So we do, if the compliance isn't there, if you're not, and as a borough, you tend to bid properly, or municipalities do a much better job than private entities or nonprofits sometimes do. But we make sure you are compliant from envisioning the project to the bid package going together. All right inclusions are in your bid package. We're communicating with the engineer, we're communicating with the borough, making sure if we need a resolution from council, it's ahead of time. We're not, behind the 8 ball on that. Once the grant is awarded, then we are, prevailing wages, insurance needs to look like this, bonds need to be in place. Here's what it needs to look like. And at the federal level, it's tricky. At the state, some programs are trickier than other. We are also a consulting firm under our second 5-year contract with the Pennsylvania Office of the Budget, Commonwealth Office of the Budget for RACP. So the RACP program that Kathy was talking about. So we are the state's consultant, not when we're on this side of RACP, but for other projects where we are the state's eyes and ears for that program. So we have to be up to date on compliance, and it changes literally daily, weekly with that program in particular. Every project is different and there are different nuances to that program, but we stay in touch with compliance requirements across the board. When administrations change, for example, when the federal administration changed last year, every single program changed, and including the interface or the portal you would use to go in and apply for the funds. And then the portal you would use, we're relearning right now on behalf of other clients, the EPA portal, the FEMA Department of Justice portals. They all got not just renamed, but retooled. They had to just take a year, redesign everything, confuse everybody, and make sure. So we, spend time. It's not fun. It's not, the fun stuff of the job. Nobody likes to hear about it, but it's important because it could take, if we don't get the compliance right for you, it's, you're waiting 6 months, a year to get the funds, and that doesn't help you. If you've budgeted the funds to come in 2026, it's our job to make sure they come in 2026, whether we have to study new funding portals on the weekend or not, we'll do it because it's important to us that, we keep our word and we're meeting your expectations and your taxpayers' expectations. So that compliance and drawdown, while it's not a fun thing to talk about, it's very important to us and we're very, very mindful of it. And I think we do a really nice job, personally.
To piggyback on that, to say RACP, which we received $3 million in funding for the Public Works Garage, there is literally no way borough staff would have been able to get through the application and award process. Is simple. It's everything on the back end. Corey and Holly and Colleen helping us through this middle of all the invoices, working with Stan Tech, who is the analyst assigned by the state to come out and review everything, like what we dealt with the steel angles and having to get that all fixed after the fact. There is no way, I would say even a team of 3 people in this office would have known what to do working on it and nothing else. So that assistance alone to get the reimbursement, which we received that reimbursement last week, $2.6 million. That alone was instrumental. So
And it helps that Holly, we keep mentioning, who is not here. I feel like we should bring her up on screen.
I know.
So, Holly joined Econ right after you. Yeah. So yeah, about
Yeah.
two and a half years ago. Holly spent 19 years with the state, with the Commonwealth Office of the Budget for the RACP program. So she was a RACP manager. She's been in every management position that RACP has, from application review to special conditions to pay requests. She's done all of those things. So she has had a 20-year relationship with all the staff and leadership of the Administration Office of Budget. We are also, as I said, like a stand tech. We are a stand tech to other projects. So we have a great, rapport with Office of Budget. We literally speak to someone at Office of Budget every day. That is no exaggeration. So that was a personal, I think, achievement for us, because that steel angle thing, I thought, okay, in another municipality where you're not as organized or not as, you could have panicked, you didn't. Poor Jim Bam could have panicked, he didn't. We said, okay, whatever we need to do, we'll replace the angles. I'll get up on the ladder myself. We'll take, that saved you 6 to 9 months because if steel goes wrong, we have projects at Federal Health Center. I won't say where it is right now, but did everything right, except the contractor they hired absolutely just messed up the steel. There's foreign steel in it. None of it's right. The state is still a year later. It should have been funded a year ago. Still trying to figure out what to do with this project. So the fact that your team pays attention to those things, and if we say, we don't have to go into the nitty gritty of why, but those angles got to come out and new ones got to go in. Let's just take care of it. That saved you probably 6 to 9 months.
The details matter.
Yeah, they do.
They really do. And then at the same time, and thank God they're doing the compliance, because my eyes kind of glaze over on
not the
those
fun
parts of the call. Mandy is really in the minutia with Colleen and her team, but then there's often permitting challenges, right? Like there might be a project, and again, this isn't something we really market, right? But it's part of how we service, because we all want to give 5-star service and get this project done timely and get your money back timely. So Mandy is the person out front working with her contacts in PennDOT, Office of the Governor, DEP, the contractor's permit, they're not hearing back, or there was a request for information that we already submitted. So there's a lot of those communications behind the scenes. And sometimes it hasn't happened here. I'm thinking of the developer in Philly. The client isn't getting their money back at all, and it's because there may be a new employee in PennDOT who just missed something. So then we're kind of chasing people around that person. Professionally, we don't want to be rude about it, but it's like, you messed up, the client needs their money. So we touched on this earlier, our outreach is with, local, state, and federal. Again, just for the record, we're not lobbying for Wyomissing at federal. And we work closely with the senator and representatives' offices, not just the electeds, but their staff. I think Spencer is your main point from the district. He is the newer staff person, although he's been there for a while. Really embracing of the borough and your projects and your mission. We have our contacts in the governor's office who oversee the specific agencies, and then who also, bless you, are the points for RACP. And then we talked about the different agencies, their staff, mid-level, deputy secretaries, secretary. We often go to the secretary's office at PennDOT and talk to them, reminding them this app is out there. We believe it's on the list. Can you check? So we also work with them closely. The electeds in the governor's office understand the demand and challenge for public sector entities. You have a lot of work to be done, and you are not being thrown extra money every year. So they know these are priorities, but they also appreciate that we and you understand they are hearing from all of the munis in their district, right? So we do the storytelling of why now is the time for Wyomissing's project for X to be supported. And we've been having those conversations specifically with RACP for the borough building, the municipal application. Governor Shapiro really hasn't been moving the RACP apps through quickly. So, and there's been a lot of apps that have been held up. So Mandy, kind of loses her mind because it's like hurry up and wait. So we have a lot of that with the apps. And then, as we said before, we work with John Fetterman and Dave McCormick's offices. And I think Colleen has the better relationship with the Congresswoman.
We work with her office on a lot of other things, but love her staff. She's fantastic. And, it's something I think we've offered before. And I'm sure she comes out on her own, but if there's ever an opportunity to have her, and she loves walking tours. So as the weather warms up, if there's things you want to do with Chrissy Houlihan, I think we can, collectively help facilitate. Great administration, again, not the fun stuff, but it's really important. So, and we're proud to do it. So I'm not going to shy away from this, but this is the heart of what we do. We actually also do quite a bit of crisis compliance. So state agencies, twice federal agencies recently, and other, engineers will reach out and say, this project is stuck. I don't know why it's stuck. Something to do with steel or something to do with payrolls. I don't know what happened. They bid it the wrong way. Can you help? So we get a lot of that sort of, can you help unwind whatever went wrong and fix it? In the case of the borough, we haven't had to unwind or fix anything, which is fantastic because we try and work with your team to stay ahead of it. But again, this is all very important from beginning to end. We manage the grant post-award or whatever the award is. So that comes from everything from making sure your bid package is solid to making sure the scope of work, what we said we were going to do is what you actually bid and do. Because that can put funds in jeopardy if you're doing something out of scope. If there is something that comes up to say, hey, this number came in the scope lower than what we thought it was, is the grant fungible? We can go back to we'd like to do this instead. We could go back to the agency. We've done that a number of times to say, okay, we exhausted the funds here. Can we take this money and change the scope and use it for something else? I think we've done that at least twice. Once
Doing it right now.
with Lincoln Brandywine and the PennDOT and the multimodal funds. So we've been able to do that so far successfully. And that's in conjunction with Saxon and Stump because, two or three PennDOT deputy secretaries ago, I'll give the example, it's probably the next slide, I'm stealing a little of our own thunder, but we worked with then PennDOT deputy secretary for multimodal, Jenny Slorzy, was her married name. Two things, to rescope some PennDOT funds where the project came in less than expected, and we shipped it to another project to save the funds. We'd have to give it back to the Commonwealth. Like, we'd love to keep them in the borough of Wyomissing. Can we do that? She was great, and Kathy just had that personal relationship and professional relationship. But then in those conversations, we had several. I remember being at Sly Fox, and it was I can't even remember what it was for. If it was for Sly Fox opening, or if it was a tour of the redevelopment of the mill or the mills. But we were there, and Jenny was there. And said, what else is important to the borough? And Michelle's like, we would like bike share. I was at a bike share program. And Jenny's like, I might have some secret money for that. And actually they did. And it was just leftover money in some weird esoteric, strange PennDOT pot somewhere. And she managed to find $140,000 or $150,000 to do that. And then we actually took money from the other PennDOT grant when we couldn't spend on anything else and said, well, can we do a second year of the bike share program? And we did. So those kinds of things, while they weren't anticipated, it was exciting at the time, and we were able to do that unexpectedly. And I think that's kind of the beauty of us being able to work together and then work with you and say, suddenly there's money available. You have 2 days to decide what you want to spend it on. Can we spend $150,000 on bike transportation somewhere in Wyomissing? So we try and keep that kind of thing, our eyes open for it.
That was exciting too, because we ended up getting 4 years of bike share, absolute zero cost to the borough, on top of revenue generated from the rental of those bikes. That was sitting in a pot of money that ended up totaling, I think, close to $60,000 between private donations that were going to go towards funding a bike share or then the rentals. Yeah, that was a fun day. What do you mean you have money hand out for things? Okay.
That's why the relationships are really helpful, because we're just kind of talking to our friends who are in these decision-making positions, and they have money to spend and they're looking for projects. So, when it comes up in conversation, they're like, oh, let me say, this could be a good project we can support.
And another reason they're happy to do that for entities like the Borough of Wyomissing is because you are excellent stewards of taxpayer dollars. So there are municipalities where, the similar person would say, could they be like, you know what? They still didn't spend the money you gave them 2 years ago. Let's see if somebody else could potentially use that. If that money becomes available, the borough spends it. The borough spends it well. We close out the grant appropriately, everything's buttoned up, and we can move on to the next one. And that's so important, because the next time you're in front of the decision makers and they say, hey, I heard that something about the steel, but in this case it was, I heard something about the steel, but you resolved it. Well, Stantec was like, look at the Borough of Wyomissing, they're an example for how to handle it. So we try and keep you in that kind of light, working with your team.
So when we were preparing for meeting with you all today, we were able to do a review of our success with the borough. So, I think the slide says it all. That's the amount of monies we were able to help you win since 2019, and those are our consulting fees that the borough's paid. And we always like to say this with our funding clients, there is a tangible return on investment, and it's significant. Especially with municipal clients, we know the taxpayers, and you have public meetings, and there's a lot of scrutiny on expenses, especially consulting fees. But I think I used to work for the city of Harrisburg and other governments. There's a lot of expenses with consultants and lawyers and professional services. I think we are probably one of the few, if not the only, that can really show a return on investment by winning those monies for you.
The other missing piece is that you're saving our staff. And as Michelle said, three people.
Yeah,
Couldn't duplicate what you
Right.
did, so
And that
that has a big
big
value too.
That was one grant application.
So we try-
These, I mean, they're gonna get to a slide of all the pending grants that we have going on right now, but I mean, I think this slide alone speaks volumes to, yes, there was staff time invested to get from point A to point Z for every single one of these projects we were awarded and completed, but the additional amount of staff time, had it not been for Econ and Saxton and Stump, I can't put a number on that.
yeah,
I appreciate that, because we often say we work, and we try to function as an extension of your staff.
right.
And in some cases, if you don't have to hire a grant writer or have in many of our private companies, they don't have in-house government relations. So those types of things, and certainly municipalities, be a lot of scrutiny to say, well, this staff person is just doing lobbying government relations. That's tough to do in a municipality. We have to wear a lot of hats. So I appreciate you saying that, because that's what we really try to do, is not make things harder for your team. We try and alleviate that, report back, be keep communicative, open book, be transparent, but also function so that we're extending. Your staff can focus on running the borough, and we can focus on.
And it's also,
Things like that.
this is what we do every day, unless a company or a municipality has dedicated staff to learning the names, the requirements, and they do change. Even within an administration, they'll change the policy of how things are being decided. I think it would be really challenging for a full-time person to stay on top of this if they had other responsibilities. If this was all you were doing, maybe. But even then, we are grateful that we can work with Colleen's firm, because it's
It's all we do, and
comprehensive.
sometimes
Yeah.
we can't keep on. That we do.
Right, so that really summarizes all of our awards, and we plan on many more to be added to that list.
And what I love about this group of projects is, as I said earlier, it's public works.
Right.
It's Parks and Rec. It's physical improvements to the public works and public safety facility. It's parklands planning. It's not just, construction funding. So it's, hey, we'd like to do this project in 2027. Are there planning funds out there that maybe we could access to, so that I can make it more favorable when we're in a public meeting to say, hey, we're going to pursue this, but good news, we've got $10,000 to go towards the expense of planning and engineering. So we try and be very cognizant of that. But I mean, you've got water and sewer projects in there. You've got stormwater projects in there. I know you could read, I'm sorry, but it's nice to see it all in one slide. It's been fun.
And I want to jump in on this one first, because one might think, how do you keep this all organized? And from our office, we have Mandy, who uses, we didn't want to take the whole day showing you our Monday.com service, but Mandy runs Monday.com, which is all the color coding, and it's a fascinating program. I don't know how to use it. It lists each program, due dates, application dates, who we've talked to. You can search and organize it whatever way possible. Mandy, I think, dreamsmonday.com. So that's
If we
how
get off
keep it
track,
on-
Mandy, on our bi-weekly call, she's like, Colleen, you said last time you were going to do this, and it's in my spreadsheet. Gotta get it. So no, we appreciate it, because
But these are the priority projects. And, we can work with you if things change, if as a council you think those should not be the priorities. We always talk to Michelle, but we are nimble, but we will have input and recommendations on your strategy, because we kind of know what is sexy up in the Capitol and what's going to qualify and what's not. And these are great projects. So a lot of work is kind of underway already on these.
I was gonna say, we have pending applications, RACP and LSA for the fire safety protocol and the police department. Corey and I are working on C2P2 for the Wyomissing parklands, as well as, I think that's when we talked about growing greener as well.
Yes, a little bit later this year. And it's important that we emphasize, and I think it goes without saying, but I want to say it regardless because it's important. We implement your priorities. We don't tell you what your priorities are, right? We just don't. Now, if, as I said, like something comes up and we say, hey, PennDOT has this extra $180,000 they want to put towards something in the borough related to bikes, well, that's very specific, right? But, or if an opportunity comes up, it's a new program, or hey, community project funding opens, we didn't talk about it, but it's suddenly open, what do you have? But we'll still come to you and say, what is your priority? So we implement what you decide collectively is a priority. And as Kathy said, we are nimble and we can pivot. So it can always change.
But we're also going to tell you, because we want to win for you, right? So if you say, we don't want to do the police department, we want to do, I don't know, we're going to say to you, well, the police department, well, at this point, the police department has a way better chance because we've been lobbying on it for a long time. But we also take into consideration information shared by your respective legislators and what they like and not. Many of the programs are economic development focused, so they want to see a return in that respect, jobs. We also talk about the current events. It's a gubernatorial reelection year. So we know the administration wants opportunities they have on a list of choices to send the governor out to. That is good. It's, what we do. We had somebody start with us at the firm about a year ago who worked in the Capitol, and there were a few funding programs. She's like, well, that's not political. And I said, everything's political. Everything's political because everything is getting that front office's check. So we will share that information if you have additional projects because, we could say to you, we don't think that's going to get support. You can still tell us to go after it. But we can also recommend then this may not be the year to go after project A. Let's do that one in year X. Let's push a different project up because we're hearing the chatter and what they want.
And we'd frankly rather do that and disappoint you initially than to take you down a path of expectation, put the application in, even though we know it's not going to be favorably received for whatever reason, not because we didn't, do a collectively good job, but because it's just not the priority for that program that year. And it does change. It really does. And we try and keep you apprised of that. Sometimes we're bad news Betty, but hopefully it's not, look, we submitted and you didn't get it. It's we pivoted at the right time. We applied for the right thing that would resonate with those decision makers.
I think a good example of that too is the conversation we had with Lauren last year for DCNR Corey for C2P2. We were going to go after stormwater, and at that time, he was encouraging us to do so. And then follow-up call in fall of 25. No, that's not eligible. Go for this instead. So we pivoted, and now it's going to be a different application focused on a different project with the stormwater funded through hopefully another grant program, but. That's the type of information, had Corey not had, we could have potentially wasted our time on an application for nothing.
Right. Yeah. And we want to be a voice in your elected's ears and the decision makers' ears that they know we have a winning record, and that we're credible with what we're saying to them. We're not just kind of making things up.
Mm-hmm. And if you award it, they're going to spend it properly, they're going to bid it properly, it's going to be compliant, and you're going to be proud to stand at a ribbon cutting and in front of whatever it is that you funded, because it was done in accordance with the Commonwealth requirements or federal requirements.
So we threw a lot of information at you. We're happy to take questions if you have questions about anything we talked about or not. Happy to talk about anything.
I have a few questions.
Yeah, sure.
My first question for you is, who is setting your priorities? How frequently are you having conversations? Who are you having those conversations within the borough to determine the priorities?
So we meet biweekly. At minimum, we meet biweekly. So we primarily discuss it with Michelle, Jim Babb, your professional staff, who goes back to your committees and borough council to say, this is open, this is what we've discussed last year that we might apply for this program. Is that still the priority? So at times we've presented to various committees or we've met with members of council. We've done it on like site visits and that type of thing. We'll kind of walk and talk, but for the most part, we have the biweekly meetings, and then Michelle vets that or Jim, or both in combination, vets the projects with council or various committees first. Because many times we'll talk and Michelle will say, well, I have to take that to economic development and finance first, and I'll get back to you if that's still a priority. So there's always that back and forth and check in. It might not be us directly, but it's certainly, we have that great relationship, and we're cognizant of that.
And I wanted to give you the chance to answer this directly, so don't make an assumption. Do you view yourselves as advisors to the borough when it comes to grant, or just enactors of our priorities? Or is that a blended role that you see yourselves taking?
It's definitely blended. I mean, I just point to what Kathy just said about, hey, I understand that this certain thing might be a fun project to do or a priority for a group of your, the taxpayers or the residents. I don't know, improve this section of this park because it's highly utilized, or this playground needs to be improved. You could say that that's great. I understand it's a priority, but that program that is eligible for is not focused on accessible playgrounds this year. It's not focused on parkland improvements this year. It's focused on stormwater riparian buffering. So we could certainly apply for that, but we don't think you're going to be successful. So we're definitely advisors. We're not just, okay, taking the input and then we'll just throw applications out there and see what sticks. Is not how we function. And we won't be successful. We can't stand behind the strategy if we're not a voice it's an actual strategy. It's not just throw it at the wall and see what.
And I would clarify for our role, since we're registered lobbyists, so we are your lobbyists. And in that responsibility, we are consulting with you. But I would say for us, we're not quote unquote advisors, because we're also a law firm and I'm a lawyer, and that would fall under not to get too detailed, that would fall under kind of being a lawyer. And I'm not serving as your advisor in the legal capacity.
If I may interrupt, I should have done this at the beginning, so I apologize. So you know who you're talking to here. Jen, Rick, Adam, Jenna, and Chris are members of council. We have two other members of council who are not with us today. Kristen Gajewski, who is the council president, and Steve Brenner. I think you've met him over the years. So that's, and then we also have George and Mark as members of this committee. They are residents of the borough, but serve on this committee. Our committees are not just council people, but we get some civilians in it too.
I appreciate that.
And I'm sorry, you're on council. Okay.
That's why I'm such a problem.
Oh, no, this is.
You have a few more questions.
Yeah,
Important
yeah.
role.
I'm not trying to interrogate, but as a new council member, one of the things that I'm wondering about, of course, I just lost my train of thought here, is, wow, this is going poorly. Oh, here's the consideration. So the borough is facing a budget deficit. Does that concern you in terms of our ability to receive grants? How much of does financial stewardship play into grant writers' views on providing grant funds? And is that a concern?
Financial.
Looking at the borough. I mean, I know you don't get involved in our finances in that way, but does it concern you, given that we're your clients and we are in a situation?
I wouldn't say concern. I would say we are cognizant of it and we are aware of it, and we will hopefully identify programs and projects that can align, that if it's in your budget and it's a budget line item, if we can apply for a grant that we collectively believe you can be successful for in that fiscal year, to alleviate that portion of your budget, to give you a little bit more flexibility, fungibility within your budget to maybe fund overrides, or pension costs go up or whatever happens, we are very cognizant of it. I would say concern is, aware is probably, for me at least, a term that we understand. You are good stewards. You always have been. And again, to the point, and I probably talked about this too much, but spending the money appropriately is just as important as having a great project. And if this borough, if you were mismanaging funds of the commonwealths or federal governments or even these local entities, that would not bode well for future applications. So the way that we're cognizant of that is making sure that your compliance is top notch, you're drawing down, and we're communicating back to the elected officials, decision makers, the project's done, would you like to come out and see it? We make sure they stand in front of it, they're proud of it, so that way it makes it easier to do the next one. But we're always aware of it. And if, we haven't, I think, increased our rates since we started with the borough since 2019. I think when we maybe the very
came to the
first
firm,
year.
we had to bump it up.
Okay,
It was like
but-
500.
So we're a portion of your budget, and we're very aware of that, and we want to make sure that there is a return on investment for you. So on that aspect of it as well, we're definitely cognizant and aware.
It's roughly a total, if you look at the line item budget for the borough, 463,000 is a code for economic development. I think the annual total is roughly $94,000.
That was what you had previously indicated to me, yeah.
And we do have a lot of conversations, not to, and I know you've got a list, I apologize, but for example, with police and fire, to say, there are some grants that we are pursuing or have pursued, or hopefully, when we have a fire chief in place and we can focus on that again, 3 year, the federal program can fund 3 years of salary for, up to 3 personnel or 5 personnel, depending on the program. We have a lot of in-depth conversations behind the scenes to say, if we go after these funds, you have to commit to the federal government, you're going to sustain that firefighter's position, in perpetuity. Can we do it? Does it make sense? So we're looking 3, 5, 10 years out to say, can the budget sustain that before we put an application in, pledge to the feds in this case, that yes, the borough can sustain that. We want to be very sure that it's as accurate as it can possibly be forecasted. So cognizant, I think, is probably it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not that I didn't like your verbiage.
Not a worry. I have one more. This is like a mechanism question. So if we say we're to be in a situation where we need to decline funds, how would we go about that? And also, how would that affect, and what implication would it have for future grant awards?
That's a great question. Do you want to take the beginning of that and I
Yeah.
can add to it?
Oh, I was going to take it back.
Okay, no. Well, I can start. So that's a great question, and I wish more folks would ask that. We do a lot of upfront work to make sure that if you get it, you can use it. But in many cases, completely beyond everybody's control, we're not the decision makers, right? We're the advocates, we're the implementers, but we're not necessarily the decision makers. You will ask for $3 million and get $500,000. What do you do now? And you have to spend it in 2 years. Is the borough expected to make up 2.5? We talk, we're doing it with the police and administration building now. Can we make up that gap in the next 2 funding cycles so that you don't have to make up the gap? And then, we're here in 2 years and say, okay, that 500,000's got to go back. It's never a great thing. But we do stay in touch and communication with elected officials. If that happens immediately, somebody's picking up the phone saying, wow, like this really puts the borough in a tough spot. We really need it. We asked for 2 million, not because we were, swinging at 2, hoping we get 500,000. We're grateful for it. We're thankful. But just so you know, we're coming back next cycle and we need to make up that 1.5. So
Yeah,
that
and
happens.
those are part of the
a lot.
conversations with the electeds. They
100%.
will often ask, if we haven't gotten to that part of our discussion, is this what you need to get it done? Or if I can get you, because they
do that.
start to know what they're going to get at a certain point, they will say, well, if we can only get you X, can you still do the project? So we have those conversations. Now, I think if there was a point, and again, the other part is like, you'll get an award. You don't have to decide that month, right? If you're using that money or if you need to turn it back, there's time, and we'll kind of work on that puzzle I talked about. How do we move the pieces around? But if it gets to a point where you need to return the money, we give a best an explanation as possible to the electeds. I would suggest we wouldn't, whether it was you or another client, we don't want to do that often, because as a decision maker, they're not going to want to award you money if it's not going to be invested and get a return. They're going to start to go, well, we don't want to do that. But I don't think we've done that. I really
In some
don't
cases,
have clients.
our next, if there's not another funding program available, or if the timeline for your project is too quick for the
Yeah.
next year's funding program to be implemented, we'll go back and say, can we rescope? Like, we can't use it right now. We didn't get enough for the Lincoln Brandywine pipe. Can we move it over here to this stormwater problem? Same borough, same area, same neighborhood. We want to spend the money. We don't have enough as a borough, a resource fund constrained borough to spend it this year as intended, but we can spend it over here. Can we have your consideration? And often relationships and,
They work with us.
they work with us.
They do.
Yeah.
So I think that there's 2 examples actually up here on the screen. So we asked in 21, we asked for 3 million for ACP for Public Works. We got 1. And I remember that phone call, we were like, okay, great, but it's a third of the funding that we asked for. How are we going to get this project done? So, the response back was, thank you for the money. We'll be back next year for the next round requesting additional funding. And we sat and we reapplied and we were fortunate. Same thing with flood mitigation for Brandywine Lincoln. I mean, that was a $600, almost $750,000 project, I think. So great, you gave us $125,000 to do a quarter of a pipe. That doesn't make a lot of sense when we're going to have to mobilize 4 times with that amount of funding to get the whole project done. So yeah, I do feel like when we've had to go back and either reapply or give an explanation, the legislators have been understanding as to some effect, yeah, we short funded you. So come back next time and hopefully we'll get more.
And we do everything we can to not return the money.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think we've
Like,
ever.
something like the Cambridge Avenue culvert, we pivoted for that.
$633,000 we awarded initially through that PennDOT MTF was supposed to be for 4th Street. And because we were fully funded through DCED, which had no match requirement, well as PennDOT's 70/30, that's when we went back to PennDOT. We're like, thank you for the money. Can we use it for something else? And thank you. And we've now done that twice.
I think we also rescoped on the GTRP for the Stonehouse in 21. I think that was
Great,
actually.
thank you. We absolutely did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
absolutely did. I
Yeah,
think
so
we did
jumped through
ADA
hoops
improvements
to
for
not-
Stonehouse Park.
You know, you get that award, you don't want to give them the money back unless you have to.
Yeah, we're pretty ferocious about that on the back end. Like, we're not giving this back. What can we do?
Yeah.
Yeah, who can we talk to?
Do you have other questions?
There's always more.
No, he doesn't.
You come back, you can always pick up the phone.
I think that might be the move. Maybe we could have a conversation at a future date.
Sure, happy to.
In deference to everyone else's.
Always available.
No, thanks, Adam. Those are good. I'm just trying to prognosticate. It's the first, thank you for explaining all this because it's so important in how the machine works, and you guys have done a great job.
Thank you.
Thanks for your advocacy. And Jen likes to say this, so I'll quoting Jen. For years, the taxpayers have gotten much more than they deserve in tax payments.
Not
And
that they
it-
deserve.
It's because
They've got
Strike that from
more
than- yeah,
they have
we've been able
received
to
more in
over-
services than what
overperform.
they've been paying.
Yeah, we've been able to overperform based
Yeah.
on the tax rates. And it's due to things like this, I think, that, yeah. But I guess, is it possible to be victims of your own success? So there's been over $8 million in awards. These are, county, state, federal funds. It's like optics are important, right? And if they keep giving money to Wyomissing, that's not going to be a good look. So does that well dry up? Or is it that we're fortunate that we can pay you guys as consultants and not many municipalities statewide have that resource? And so we're competing with a small number of other entities as opposed to every township in the whole state. Like, are we going to keep getting this money or not?
So I think it's both, right? I think it's more of the latter, that there are munis that don't have the revenue to hire the consultants, but I'd say there are more munis that don't know enough. They don't know what they don't know. Like, they don't know that they can do what you're doing. They don't have that knowledge. Some of them will work directly with their legislator's office, but the legislators have so much staff, they can't do all of this. I don't think the well will dry up. The well won't dry up just because you're successful, but Schwank, Sapita Freitas, let's say they're still in office another, 2 terms, they will look at us if it's a program that isn't as significant as maybe they would like, and say, well, and they have said this to us in meetings too, like, we can't support you in this coming RACP. I think that was the last round. We can't make this RACP app a priority because we did just give to you. So we have those conversations,
Okay.
You
right?
need to wait a cycle.
Right. Now, I think if you guys get everything done in the borough that is fantastic and needed, and then we're just kind of making up projects, I think, then but there's always going to be money available for these projects because state government, federal government know it's needed. So I don't think your success hurts you in that regard.
Okay.
It's just continue to submit good projects, and the timing has to work with the legislators.
It's a great question. And then I'll give the example of just, and I'm trying to think, is Wyomissing a victim of its success? It depends on the lens that's being used to look at, and from which level of government. And I'll give you the example, not necessarily the state, but the federal level. 2 senators have the entire Commonwealth, of applications that they're receiving. And sure, they look regionally, but again, okay, now you're competing against the entire Commonwealth for these particular, funding buckets. Chrissy Houlihan's district, she's got places like Parksburg and Coatesville and Oxford, folks, communities that are more significantly economically disadvantaged. So you've got Representative Houlihan responsible to her entire district saying, Coatesville over here, their public administration building roof is literally falling in on their employees. And can you wait a cycle? Yes, I know it's a priority for the borough, but I really have to be able to go to Coatesville and say, you deserve to work in a building that the roof isn't falling in, right? So, and we'll communicate that. We won't say, oh, well, we just weren't lucky. We'll say, look, she has to stand in front of these 3 communities or whatever. This round, we might have to wait another cycle. So you may experience a couple of rounds of disappointment, but always with the communication and the explanation. And we don't make things up. If it is what it is. If it's, we just don't like the project, we'll tell you, she just didn't like the project. Or these other communities, literally have a physical, danger to their employees. They need to do their public works building first. We'll communicate that, and we respect and understand it.
Some of these projects too, Chris, I should say grant programs, like the Office of the State Fire Commissioner, you apply, you're getting funding. We've tried to be strategic with the West Lawn Interceptor, which was funded through Act 13. That was a joint application with Spring Township because a lot of grant programs like to see multi-municipal cooperation. So we knew it was our project, we had to do it, but because Spring Township ties into it, it was no brainer to put their name on the application too, with us taking the lead, knowing that it would increase our chances of funding.
That's a great point. And thanks for your great work, Michelle.
These have all been, for the most part, really fun projects.
I think a couple of years ago, I'm like, maybe we should move to Wyomissing. There's so much cool stuff going on.
You're in luck, we have a few houses. I will never apologize for success. I mean, this, I think that we have a commendable structure where we have a series of committees that do the heavy lifting. So when we get to council meetings, it tends to be all those in favor say aye sort of thing because it's already been figured out at the committee level. But that's done in conjunction with folks like you and of course our staff, which is, I will continue to argue, is second to none. I've had the opportunity through the Center for Excellence in Local Government here to deal with almost every municipality in Berks County. And there's nobody that's operating as efficiently as we are. What I really caution, though, is, and we have some, we had a significant turnover in the makeup of the council. So there's, I think, some patience that's needed to kind of figure things out rather than start making changes because we can. We need to, I think, understand that council's function is the big picture, and our job is to get the right people in the right positions, whether that be staff or the hired guns, and let them do their job, not micromanage from the council level. That's one of the biggest concerns I have, is we just need to have that discipline to understand that this thing is working well. And our job is to make sure it continues that way. We have these two big portraits of Toon and Janssen, who were the founders of the borough. And I look up at those things constantly and think, our job is basically don't screw this up. I mean, yeah, we have a budget deficit that we need to be cognizant of, but I am not going to stop doing the things that I know have been successful for this community because I'm worried about whether we should cut out a playground program or something. I mean, we got to look at the big picture. So everybody here, well done. Are there other questions for our guests?
I did just want to have a testimonial. Last year, you guys were instrumental in getting the Gilmore Henning playground. I mean, it was not a lot of money, but it was still a plus. And
program
made the event much better with that.
Happened for Carnival Night, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And it was a pleasure working for somebody that never had to do that before. Going through that process, you guys made it so much easier. So
Thank you.
I give you a lot of credit.
Corey has a soft spot in her heart for those types of programs and projects. She's a junior horn, trained in degree in landscape architecture. So the environmental, the stormwater, the parks programming, those are all near and dear to her heart.
Very
So
meaningful to me. Yeah.
appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move into some old business here. We'd like to update everybody on some current projects or properties that we're on our radar. I'd also like to touch on some coming attractions. So Michelle,
You ladies need to get going.
you need to leave?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I don't mind listening.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not going to be lengthy.
Okay,
No,
sounds
it's
great.
2
Yeah.
hours, just 2 hours.
Two more.
I just want lunch.
Eventually on a Plum Creek, but it's open for a
A
while.
few updates on a couple of things.
Sure. I'm assuming everybody wants an update on the Berkshire Mall, which, I mean, the main news is I don't really have one. I've not heard from Mr. Abrams since the last Economic Development Committee meeting. I did ask for a copy of that site plan. I have not received it. You are all aware that there was some legal action taken in regards to code enforcement at that property 2 weeks ago that was threatening a pending condemnation. Fortunately, that did not happen. All systems are back up and running in terms of fire protection, and I believe they're still waiting on the parts for the one HVAC unit, but temperatures are being maintained as required by code inside of the property. McCarthy Engineering did make ownership aware last night that as part of the court order from last year for the stormwater management repairs, they are required to televise everything that was completed within that 22-week time period, that they have until this coming Tuesday to get those tapes to McCarthy's office for review and sign off. So stay tuned. Not sure where that's going to end up. In terms of the Crown Plaza, we had a status conference hearing with Judge Budeman virtually Monday afternoon. That was Pam Van Fossen from Masano Bradley's office, myself, Glenn from Kraft Municipal Group, and then an attorney on behalf of the lender mortgage holder. Importantly, nobody that actually owns the property was on that call. They were served notice. So unfortunately, Judge Budeman fit us in, but was leaving out of the country for a couple of weeks the very next day. So we agreed to continue conversations. Lender is really bulking at putting up any type of escrow that would allow us to do the work in the absence of the owner doing it, which to some extent we understand it's not an insignificant amount of money. It's probably between $500,000 to $700,000. But respectfully, the point I made to the judge is the borough doesn't have this money to do the work on behalf of the owner if they fail to do so. So she asked us to continue communications with the attorney for the lender, also try and get a hold of the owner in some capacity between now and whenever that next hearing is scheduled for, which will likely be the end of March, beginning of April. Progress has taken place in the sense of, even with last weekend's minimal snow amount, Steve Simons was on site, plowed the parking lot. They've put cold patch in some of the holes that have opened up in the parking lot to at least allow somewhat safer access. Steve is working on finding a contractor to do the fire protection system repairs, and then it's our understanding that full repair would likely take 2 to 3 months. The PTAC units for the individual room systems to get the heat operable have been ordered. Half of them have already been delivered on site. That is between Steve as the contractor and either lender or owner. Is it a proposal? Is it an actual contract? That's for them to work out in terms of how he's going to get paid for his services, but it sounds like things are moving forward on that front. These are the two main properties I was planning on talking about.
Anybody in the committee have any particular questions or other properties they want to address?
Yours is kind of important. You want to talk about it?
Not really.
Okay.
So you're not going to say anything?
Well, I sold my business and my property, so we save that for next time. It's been enough.
Too soon.
It's been very emotional, but for what it's worth, I will say thank you to you for all the support you guys have given me with, the projects I've done. It was a great. It's very bittersweet when you love what you do with the people you do it, selling a restaurant in this community that you created. So this town has been a blessing when I moved back here, even though I was born and raised. It's just been such a blessing for us. Like I said, I don't really want to get choked up right now again, but yeah. So we sold our whole parcel down there, And new owners are local independent owners, and they're going to do a great job. They're wonderful people.
They've actually already reached out about permitting and moving forward.
Yeah, they're going to do it by the books like any great business person should do within this great borough, and it's going to be a success. So, you know.
And their plan is, you said, a Japanese
I
steakhouse?
believe, don't want to speak too much for them, but they will be doing a renovation inside, and
Sounds like they're working with Seattle.
Yeah. So, and Greg has always done things by the book for all our restaurants and all our projects. So, should do the
Excellent.
right thing. A win-win for everybody.
Best wishes with everything, George. Meanwhile, over at the block, that restaurant
Gertz?
is moving forward, right?
Yes.
And do you know anything about timelines or anything else? This is the piece where
Viva.
Viva was on the end there.
I don't have a specific time frame in terms of CO potentially being issued an opening date. I did talk to Greg Heflin 2 weeks ago. And he was kind of reminiscing about the last 20 years and how long it took to get to the point that they're at today. And, one of the questions I asked him, was there ever a time where not necessarily you wanted to give up, but like you truly in your heart didn't think it was going to happen? And he said, yeah, there were some very dark moments. So to see what it's become 20 years later, he's definitely very proud of it.
Do they have other vacancies in there?
Not that I'm aware of. That was, my understanding was that was the last space to be
And
filled.
this is slated to be a so-called sports bar kind of
They,
thing.
they have a nice operation. They have a couple other locations. They have one in Royersford. Nice places.
I would-
A really great addition over there.
Circling back to our guests, I can't remember, I think it was 24. We had the Department of Community and Economic Development came and did a tour, which was in large part thanks to the relationship that Econ and Saxon and Stump have with the state offices. But the whole purpose of that was to walk the block and then down to the knitting mills to see all of the work that took place in the past 15-ish years to what it was to what it is now and the economic development impact from that. I mean, again, it's a staggering story to me of that is half $500 million. Sometimes when I say that word, it's like that is $500 million in a 5-block radius of public-private partnership and investment.
In a borough that doesn't have room to grow,
Yes.
this is a big deal.
Yeah.
That $500 million does not include the Berkshire Mall. So I'm telling you, we've accomplished a lot to be proud of, I think. Anything new down in West Reading, Mark, that you know?
Everything's moving along great. We're planning a lot of new stuff with my promotions and marketing committee, which has been rebuilt since last year. I have 9 people on it who have just taken command, and they're coming up with brilliant ideas and really doing a lot of focus on the borough. Things are moving forward nicely. We will actually, I think as of today, our bid document is being reproduced. It will go out, and we will be having our meetings, our public meetings on our bid proposal. So hopefully that will get through. We have Johanni's support and we have Judy's support for it, which is a big deal. So
That's great news.
yeah.
Great news. Good thing, Mark. I think that, what we're hearing here is, that's what's going on in West Reading. We're all aware of what's over in Spring Township there at Broadcasting, which is a massive job and a lot of work going on right now. Bunch of restaurants and Whole Foods and all that stuff. When you take that in conjunction with what we're going to do with the Berkshire Mall and eventually getting the Crown Plaza solved, that neck of the woods is going to have a heck of a lot of work going on. But I think it's all very positive.
Do you plan on, and I'm sorry, having somebody from Kumru talk with us about this?
Well,
especially where
I was going to come to that, Jana. Jana had suggested we get somebody over from Kumru to talk about what they're doing. They have recently hired somebody to do some study for them. They're going to look at corridors like along Route 10 and along Lancaster Avenue, which is close to us, of course, along Route 176. But there's nothing to talk about yet. I mean, they've hired somebody to study those corridors and get public input, but then they're going to put together a plan. So they really don't know what's going to happen yet. Once they get a plan and roll it out, and the township supervisors endorse it, then there could be something to talk about. In the meantime, I have had a chance to meet with a fellow by the name of David Barr from the city of Reading. I don't know if any of you know him.
Very well.
He is, I was very impressed by him. He's their director of community development. And the thing with the city is this never-ending question. And it really isn't a cliche, it's the truth. Is the city of Reading the hub in the wheel here in Berks County, or is it the hole in the donut? I mean, the city is integral, whether we like it or not, to all of us. So I would like to have, if the committee agrees, to have David Barr come in at one of these meetings and just talk. I would like to see us create more of a relationship with them. I'm still, as you know, obsessed with that passenger train to Philadelphia thing, which is still proposed to end at 7th and Franklin at the old railroad station where Saucony presently is, although I understand they're not as solid as they would like to be or whatever. So whatever. I argue that the train should swing around. The tracks are already there. You come over to Wyomissing. This is where the action is. That I would like to tie that into maybe the old power station at the outlet site, we'll call it. That brings me to a favorite subject that we need money for, which is some sort of a bridge over the railroad tracks. I know the enormity of the cost. I think a pedestrian bridge that can handle bicycles and stuff would be enough, as opposed to a vehicular bridge. It's not that big of a deal to drive around the Park Road Bridge. Ideally, it would be a vehicular bridge, but I think maybe it could be done in such a way that it could be expanded at some point in time. But that brings me to that piece in between there that we call the island. That's like, what is it, 9 acres, I think? And
Almost done.
it's just kind of there. The problem is that for emergency services, you need to have two ways. And there is an existing bridge which could be improved, but that's it. There is the potential of a grade crossing at Talpahaken Avenue in West Reading, from Mount Chaffee's at the end there. Norfolk Southern has been very, very difficult to deal with and doesn't want any parts of another grade crossing. Although I would argue that it only needs to be an emergency thing, not open all the time. So that island thing of 9 acres, I think, is an opportunity for the borough to further our economic development work, which leads me to Governor Shapiro has recently announced a plan to address the housing shortage. There's been, in the most recent reporting year, it might have been 24 instead of 25, but whatever. Pennsylvania was 44th out of 50 in new construction. I mean, that's pathetic for what, they don't call it the Keystone State for the heck of it. We're right in the middle of everything. We have all sorts of things that go through Pennsylvania, either north, south, east, west. Pennsylvania needs to be better than that. If we're going to grow our population, you got to have a place for people to take advantage of that location. And the governor is undertaking a plan to address that. He will be suggesting things like zoning, auxiliary use buildings, where you'd have a detached garage with an apartment above it, that kind of stuff. I think of the island, I think of the opportunities. I'd like to have this committee do some grand thinking about the future of, is our zoning where we want it to be? I mean, we can, Planning Commission, of course, would have to be heavily involved in such a thing, but it needs to start somewhere. And I think that economic development is an appropriate spot for that. There is a article that was on Spotlight PA that I had sent over to Michelle. I'm going to ask her to get it out to the rest of this committee, and as long as the committee agrees, I'd like to have a conversation about whether our zoning so is adequate for what we envision for the future in the coming months. So,
There's funding for zoning updates.
well, there you go. We might have a way to help address that. So in any event, anybody in the committee have any thoughts about any of that stuff?
I mean, I think that kind of plays into just a larger strategic plan. Again, if we're going to be looking at zoning, I don't think focusing just on the island. I think
No, by no means.
we're looking at
Yeah.
a larger perspective overall, and I think that plays into so
Yeah.
many other pieces. So if we're looking at talking about a strategic plan that we're going to utilize for the next 5 to 10 years for the borough, that seems like a very good place to start that conversation. So is this something you're looking at building a full strategic plan, or are you looking to have this focus solely on zoning and residential?
I like to think that I can look at the big picture, but I'm not that good. Let's see where we go. I mean, I think we got to start somewhere. I think by having a conversation jumping off of the governor's proposed plan and so on is an adequate place to get started. If that evolves into a bigger strategic plan, fine, but I don't want to go create another committee or whatever at this point in time. I'd like to just take advantage of the expertise that's within this existing committee and see where we go. So it's every community has to figure out what it wants to be. You know, I, as you know, have been involved for a long time from the very beginning of the Center for Excellence in Local Government here in Berks County. And as I've met and gotten to know other municipal officials, it's very clear to me that every municipality has to decide what it wants to be. You know, if some rural Windsor Township, Tilden Township, whatever, wants to be rural and not have commercial involvement, whatever, that's fine. That's up to them. It's not for the county commissioners or the deep thinkers in Wyomissing to figure out what they ought to be. They got to figure that out. I have learned over my years of involvement here that commercial is very important. That while we are focused on providing the best in services to our residents, the reality is the commercial stuff helps to pay the bills. And therefore, we need to do this. And the work that we've accomplished with the knitting mills and Wyomissing Square and so on is fantastic. But now we got the mall, we got to get the Crown Plaza solved. That island, I think, is an opportunity. So we need to continue that because to us, those things are important, as it obviously is to Spring Township and to Cumru and to West Reading and so on. So I think we need to think as a group of municipalities in the core here and let it grow into the city, my thoughts. But we'll see what David Barr has to tell us. Maybe I'm wrong in that. So, yeah, Rick, you're absolutely right. You know, I didn't mean to imply that it would only be on the island. I mean, I want to look at the whole picture as to where we want to go and whether it leads to a overhaul of zoning or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we spent a lot of time over the past few years looking at zoning. I'm not sure how many different zoning overlays that we've made over the past few years. I'm at least 3 that we've looked at.
Close to 10 total.
10 in total. So again, you know, even just looking at the fact if we have 10 different zoning overlays, does that mean that we need to get a better spread of what we're attempting to do over the whole of the borough? Do we really have 10 identified different sections of needs across the breadth of Wyomissing? Are we making it too hard for people to deal with us through?
I think it's
zoning
the opposite,
overlays?
Rick. I mean, I think we've identified and addressed the need to do some modification. And rather than a wholesale change of zoning, we've done it via the overlay sort of thing, and it's worked. I mean, I've long said that if somebody comes to us with a good idea, we'll find a way to make it work. If that requires another overlay or whatever, we will. And I'm not going to ever want to say to a developer, oh, no, we can't do that because the zoning will allow that. That's yesterday's thinking. I think we have to think big. And it's worked. Anybody else? I don't want to monopolize this. Anybody have any other comments? If not, we will call it a day. Again, thank you very much for
Thank you for
making the
having
trip
us.
down to be here.
Our pleasure.
It's good to have the ability to put some faces with the names and so on. Thank you very much.
kind of disagree with your last statement. I mean, I think you're good paperwork wise, but dealing with the borough is not a fun process, right? I don't think people are knocking at your door to kind of open that can.
No, I disagree with that, but that's, I
You're not,
mean,
you're
that's
not
a,
in that
that's,
person's shoes. I
that's
think.
a good comment, and I think we need to take it to
I
heart.
think you should do more, like to have conversations. There's a lot of private landowners within a stone's throw of this building that have acres and acres in Wyomissing that are being alienated. That, you know, just have a conversation. That's all you have to do.
Well, that's part of what we want to address with looking at the zoning and stuff.
And I just had one comment for the econ team. How do you handle conflicts of interest when you're working for so many different municipalities for the same one?
We try very hard not to, and it's actually a hand in glove, I think, answer with Saxon and Stump. So one of the very first things we look at is there a conflict within a legislative district? And we try very hard to not represent the same type of client to municipalities in the exact same legislative districts. And I don't know that we have overlap like
Same
that.
for us.
And I know Saxon Stump does the same thing. And when we're doing joint clients, we look at that. So do we have a champion? Can we represent their interests equally? We will do maybe a healthcare system at a municipality in the same legislative districts, and we'll have those conversations early. But if I may be candid, one of the reasons I left my prior firm was because there were too many conflicts of interest, and it absolutely was frustrating for me. And I didn't appreciate that. So I literally started my own company for one of the core reasons is I want to be able to be a smaller company, more nimble, and make decisions about the clients so that we can serve them with, full-throatedly. And I can look you in the eye and say, I know we don't have a conflict of interest here. And I know we don't have a conflict of interest here because we're very cognizant and careful about that.
And
That's a
for
great
us-
question. I appreciate it.
For us, it's very similar. Putting the fact that we're a law firm to the side, just on the lobbying piece, like we survive and succeed and grow because of our reputation and credibility. I cannot go into the same senator with, oh, here are 4 municipalities all in your district,
All of a stormwater problem.
And I'll tell you, when I worked for Governor Corbett, a lobbyist did come into me and he had like 4 folders and they all were in higher ed. And that was a really uncomfortable situation for me on that side. He also didn't know one of them was my alma mater, which I then made a top folder. But so we do not have, we are with Schwank and Peter, we do not have public sector we're going into, and they are very different. There was one time, it's a different county, west of here, I went to the senator because we were asked, we had a private sector and a public sector, and we were asked by another entity to represent them. And I said, we already have private and public, but I went to the senator and I said, so-and-so approached us. They have this very limited project and scope. If we took that, would you be okay if we took that? They're not applying to the same fund, like it was very limited. And I wanted that senator's okay. And then I went to the chief of staff and said, the senator said, okay, because the senator actually wanted us to help that entity because he knew they needed money and they wouldn't get it if we didn't help them. Just again, because we're at a law firm, what we're doing lobbying, like we do run a conflict through the law firm's conflict, which is much bigger and larger, but we're not doing legal work. Well, I think we do an engagement for legal, but we haven't done anything. The lobbying piece, we always, is there an adverse party? And there's not, but our parameters are public sector before the senator.
And the priority is always the existing client. And I'm trying to think through, very recently, not here, but in central Pennsylvania, recently we had a mutual interest, but not yet a client, was a client of ours. That client went out of business nationally.
And that killed me.
Right. But they were related to another client. We talked and I said, well, we think we can help this business. And then the location was actually being talked about by being acquired by another, national interest. And I said, they hired us to, and it's private, to advance the improvements on this site. It needs a huge adaptive reuse. And it came to Saxon Stump. I said, can we do this, make this magic happen again? And they did a conflict check and she came back and she said, you know what, we just can't. But then recommended someone that she was close to, was ethically similar, knew would do a good job, knew how we worked, would work well with us. And our client ended up hiring that firm. So we try to do our very best.
That one killed me because
I know,
it's
it's still killing me.
And I was like, oh, but yeah, we had to turn it.
Anyway, but so we try to be very careful, respectful about that. And we will always, if it's an existing client and there's someone in Berks County even, we go to Michelle initially and say, hey, is this a problem for you? Is this an issue? So that's a great question. I appreciate you asked it.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else?
Thank
Last
you.
chance? There were,
You know how to find us.
Before we go shopping at Plum Creek.
we will